As we move ahead with our conference, we are going to begin with our second keynote speech of the day. It is an honor to have a distinguished speaker, Professor Dominic Dobson, who will enlighten us on tech doping and performance sports science, the new frontiers.
As we explore the journey from before ChatGPT to AI disruption, we now shift our focus to critical and rapidly evolving aspect of sports science, tech doping and performance enhancement. Our next distinguished speaker, Dr. Dobson, is a renowned expert in sports medicine, biomechanics, and athlete performance optimization. With an MBBS, MD in sports medicine and a PhD in sports science, he currently serves as the professor and head of Department of Sports Medicine, Sports Science at Savita Medical College. A former international badminton player, 12-time Tamil Nadu state champion, and sports medicine consultant to elite teams. Dr. Dominic has been at the forefront of integrating cutting-edge technology into sports science. He has worked with global sporting organizations, including New Zealand cricket team, the Tamil Nadu badminton team, and Apollo Hospital Sports Science Division. As president of the Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine and a leading researcher in biomechanics, he has been instrumental in developing AI-driven approaches to athlete monitoring, injury prevention, and performance enhancement. His contributions have earned him prestigious accolades, including the Lifetime Achievement Award in Sports and Exercise Medicine, IMA Vijayawada 2023, and the Badminton World Federation Research Grant 2022. Today, Dr. Dobson will shed light on the controversial and transformative world of tech doping. Are we witnessing the rise of a new era of super athletes, or are we challenging the very integrity of sports? What role will AI, biomechanics, and sports medicine play in shaping the future of performance enhancement? To explore these new frontiers of sports science, please welcome Professor Dr. Dominic Dobson.
Good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Shreya Naik and the wonderful team from Agashe College of Physical Education, and also the MAS Garware College of Commerce for organizing this wonderful new theme, BC to AD in ChatGPT to artificial intelligence. So we are primarily dealing with sports science. So I'll be briefly talking about the new frontiers in performance science. So why I term it as performance sciences? When we talk about human advancements, not the machine advancements, we always take sports as a marker, okay? Whether in terms of speed or endurance or strength or power or agility, sports has always been the marker. So to test human capabilities, that is where the performance sports science becomes a new important concept. And we will definitely, as Sir, the previous speaker, most eminently explained about the various benefits of AI and the new technology, there definitely needs to be some ethics involved, especially when we are dealing with a fair competition. And that is where you also need to be aware about a little bit of technology doping. So in this context, we will initially start with, you need to have an idea about what is the science of high performance, okay? So when we talk about performance in the sports sector, this term is often used, high performance. So we need to understand, being in the science of sports, we need to understand what is the science of high performance. We look into new frontiers in sports science. Technology we can not ignore at all, because it is right now present. It's no more future, it's definitely in present. We look into the technology which is available in sports science, and finally end with the ethics in tech doping. Now, before going into that, we had a wonderful speech by our Honorable Minister. But how we are all aware about India's sporting performance. We are a nation of about 150 crore people. Are you happy? We are all working in the sports industry as physical education directors and sports science professionals. Are you really happy with such a populous nation? We have, in fact, overtaken China. Such a populous nation of 145 crore people, is this medal tally justified? No. So what do you think is the reason behind this? So India's tally has always shown a sorry state, whether we are, so there are several reasons which has been conceptualized compared to a powerhouse like USA or Russia or China or Australia. We are definitely lagging behind in sporting performance. So that has to be taken into context. So now when we talk about the science of sports performance, you need to understand what leads to consistent excellence in sports. So we have seen excellent players even coming from the Indian system. P.T. Usha is there, MS Dhoni is there. But we always produce in small numbers. It's not always as a group of bunch. While the successful sporting nations, what we are aiming for a 2036 Olympics, and we are also aiming for becoming a developed nation in context with sports science, sports performance. For that to be a consistent excellence in sports, you need to produce champions consistently. And producing champions, 1 or 2 in the state, few in the country, is for such a big country is not adequate. So compared to the powerhouses of sports, we need to identify what you really think are we lagging behind. Is it the genetics? Is it really the environment which we are living in? Do we have adequate coaching, training? Is the system in India lacking behind? Or do you really think we are not equipped with the latest technology? Let's look into all of these factors. Now, according to David Epstein, he's one of the foremost authors in sports performance. He has done a lot of research in sports performance. He talks about elite sports as a context among athletes with uneven set of endowments and natural advantage. And sports performance is multifactorial. So if you see the image, do you think something is wrong in that image? Just be curious. What do you think? Make your mind visualize. The gold medal winner, what is he? He or she looks like an alien, right? Okay, so compared to the silver medal and the bronze medal, that guy is born or his body shape or his kinanthropometry is huge, and he seems to have some wings and some halo in his head. Okay, so there is definitely some role of genetics when it comes to sporting performance, especially in terms of speed, especially in terms of endurance. The role of genetics cannot be underplayed. Okay, so I don't know how many of you follow Winter Olympics. So this is a legendary, we all know about the Summer Olympics. Winter Olympics happens in the Scandinavian countries especially. And this guy is a legendary Finnish skier, Eero Mäntyranta. So he has performed amazing feats over a period of 3 consecutive Winter Olympics, and he has got around 7 gold medals in 60, 64, 68. What happened is, in his body, throughout his extraordinary career, what they found is there was a rare genetic mutation which allowed his bone marrows to overproduce red blood corpuscles, and that was a huge advantage for being an endurance sporting athletes in a sport like skiing. Okay, so there is definitely a role of gene when it comes to sporting performance, especially endurance and especially speed. Okay, so even in the latest article, very recently, few weeks before in Science, the scientists have been able to identify the mutations which help horses. Horses are supposed to be the gold standard for consistent, fast running over a period of time. Human beings cannot keep running. We'll be able to run 10 seconds, 20 seconds at our full pace. But horses are able to do consistently over a period of time. So they found a genetic mutation even in the horses, which enables the horse to be exceptionally good in endurance and also speed. Okay, so there is definitely a role of genetics when it comes to sports performance. The second component, environment. Do you think our environment is not suitable for performance? What do you really think about the marathon runners? Marathon runners, if you research, especially they are from a specific area in Africa, okay? Either from Kenya or Ethiopia. All the famous marathoners will be from, most of the world record holders comes from a special tribe called Kalenjian tribe. Okay, so these Kalenjian tribe had a evolutionary advantage where they were living in a altitude which was very close proximity to wild or the forest, where they will have constant interaction with the wild animals, which enabled them to, they were basically hunters and hunter-gatherers, and they over a period of time, developed a muscle architecture which enabled them to run consistently for long periods with a high speed without getting fatigue. The calf muscle was enabled in such a way, and that over a period of generations transformed them to legendary marathon runners. So Kalenjian tribes, the skeletal, their kinanthropometry, if you see, the lower limb will be literally like a pencil, okay? But they will keep on running without getting any fatigue in the calf muscle, okay? So environment does play a part. So what happened is sports scientists try to reproduce that with artificial chambers, hypoxic chambers, high altitude training. There were different training methods like train high, live low methods, but still they were not able to produce the same result like how this naturally enabled Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes. So environment does play an important part. One of the other important components which coaches keep coming back is talent identification. We come across several scouts throughout, even in our country, where we keep sending them over different parts. IPL is happening now. So prior to IPL, there are a lot of talent scouts who goes to different rural parts to identify talent. But talent, is it really so easy to identify? Talent like MS Dhoni playing a helicopter stroke is not something which is very easy to identify and develop. Oxford says that talent to be potential for success or to become an elite performer. But talent is like looking for a black cat in a dark room. Can you really see the black cat? You can just only see the eyes. So it is not so scientific. Okay, so if you only depend on talent identification, you might go wrong. So sports science has to embrace what is more important, which is called something called LTAD, or long-term athlete development programs. How many of you have heard LTAD, long-term athlete development? Good. So long-term athlete development is not something new frontier. It's more, it was originally found from the ancient Greek and Romanian warriors, ancient Sparta basically. They were all trained to fight battles. They were called agoge tribes. They were used for battles. And this way of training over a period of time, from young age to adolescence to adults, was followed by the Cold War nations, USA and USSR, to train the athletes also when post the Second World War, when America and Russia was in a huge battle to get sporting supremacy. So long-term athlete development is a much more scientific structure which was originally designed by the Canadian sports scientist Bally. So he designed that talent identification alone is not the right methodology. What is more important for consistent excellence in sports is to have a long-term athlete development program. So why LTAD is very important is long-term athlete development is because when the athletes develop, what happens is we see a lot of young kids in academies, in sporting systems, hundreds of athletes are put in the academies. But how many of them are, to realistically make them successful, the ratio will be less, okay? So, and there is lot of emphasis which is given in under 12, under 15 age group on winning, rather than a proper training. So at that age group, it is more about young athletes tend to undertrain and overcompete. And we see a lot of junior age group competitions, which might not be the ideal scenario, okay? So you have to encourage them to have an active start and play multiple sport. For the holistic sporting culture, you need to enable the youngsters and young kids to play multiple sport, and over a period of time, after 15 years, then teach them how to train to competition. If you start giving too much emphasis on competition at an earlier phase, then there is a chance for burnout and the even deserving athletes to be lost. Okay, so again, long-term athlete development is a holistic program where even it is realistically not possible 100 athletes are there in an academy to even produce 10 or 20 for international level. It's frankly not possible unless you are lucky. But the other 80 people should not be lost to the sport. That is very, very important. So to have a philosophical background towards sport is also needed. So we find lot of depression and anxiety in young athletes now in our OPDs. What happens is this young athletes constantly overtrain and they go for a lot of competition, and they are not able to accept the losses at a right spirit. Okay, so you have to train them to take sport and value the sport as a fun thing before teaching them to compete. So LTAD is an important concept. And finally, also for athlete development, you need two important segregation where India is lacking. One is you need to demarcate performance coaching, and one is to demarcate performance health management. One important core area which is undermined in Indian system is the importance of sports medicine. Okay, so here the lack of awareness towards sports medicine leaves athletes at risk of lot of career-threatening injuries. So to have a proper understanding, if the athlete is having some injury concerns, you need to put them to a sports medicine doctor at an early stage so that he or she is not lost to the sport. Now, sports medicine and sports science encompass a huge umbrella having two broad themes: human performance and athlete injury and illness management. Human performance deals with exercise physiology, biomechanics, sports psychology, sports nutrition, performance training, and strength and conditioning, while the other injury management component deals with medical care, sports injury management, anti-doping, regenerative therapies, and sports emergencies, which is basically on-field management of sports injuries. Now, the sports science component is very, very important for performance. Again, this is where India lacks big time. Sports nutrition is really important. What goes into your body will decide the performance quotient. Proper nutrition is definitely important for athlete performance. Very common notion is misnomer or a myth is when it comes to sports nutrition, you always think about supplements. Always remember, it is always food first approach, but not food only approach. There might be requirement for supplements, but remember, food is always first. You need to be aware about the calorie consumption. You need to be aware about the macronutrients, what are the micronutrients, so that you understand what food needs to be given during off-season, during on-season training. Okay, sports nutrition is a very important component. Next comes sports psychology. As we all know, mind is the most powerful muscle of the athlete. Okay, so what you feed your mind will decide the elite level performance. If for you to be successful, and what differentiates the winner at the top level will always be your mental strength. And you need to incorporate mindfulness, meditation, visualization, imagery, visualization techniques, and progressive relaxation technique, so that all these components can help the athlete recover fast, train optimally. Sports physical therapy or physiotherapy is an integral component of all teams, but what happens is, unfortunately, in the Indian setup, what we see is the physiotherapist becomes a lone warrior, okay? And what happens is, if the system is, or the health of the athlete is only left with the physiotherapy specialist, then that risk puts the athlete at risk of lot of doping issues. There is a risk of injury management not being holistically handled, okay? So a physio alone model, which Indians still follow, might not be the ideal solution, and there needs to be a role where sports physicians have to be ingrained in the system, so that you holistically understand the athlete and treat the athlete. Sports physiology. Next comes sports physiology and sports science. And how many of you know this sports scientist? He's the famous and one of the pioneers in exercise physiology, A.V. Hill. And we are celebrating the centenary 100th year celebration of this gentleman's research before the advent of bioenergetics, before muscle physiology or biochemistry became big. His pioneering studies 100 years before still has enabled athletes to train optimally and create multiple records, especially in endurance sporting events. So to understand the athlete's physiology better is now paramount, whether it's an endurance sport athlete or an anaerobic trained athlete. So you really have to have a proper sports physiology backup for the athlete to perform at the top level. Next comes sports biomechanics, again very important for performance improvement and injury prevention. Your kinematic and kinetic data along with the EMG data will help in analyzing the techniques and also to maximize the performance. So this is really important in the sense that now at the top level you also need to we are looking at small percentage of performance enhancement, and that is where a proper strength and conditioning which is aligned with the proper biomechanics assessment becomes a very important tool. Ultimately, you need to design structured strength and conditioning program, and this has to align along with the proper optimization training cycle, okay? So depending upon the sport, you need to give them proper performance cycle so that they don't undertrain or overtrain. Now, these were the common themes which are the basics in sports science, which has to be followed back. If you are able to handle all those parameters, what I said, sports medicine, sports physiology, sports nutrition, psychology, biomechanics, and sports physiotherapy in proper order, I believe Indian system and Indian athletes will have a foolproof system where they are able to perform better in Olympics. Unfortunately, our system still has not encompassed the complete umbrella of sports medicine and sports science, and that is one huge area where Indians are lacking, and that has to be addressed for us to improve the medal count in Olympics. Now coming to the third component of new frontiers in sports science. Now, as the previous speaker very eminently said, now data is the king. You can call it's a gold mine, oil or ethanol, whatever. Data in hand is data with power in hand, okay? So you have to test the athlete, measure the athletes. You need to have an understanding about his physiology. You need to have an understanding about his psychology even. So we have quantitative measures with the athlete, because athletes are not ordinary human beings, they are superhumans. So you need to understand sporting athletes at the elite level might not be in doctor's term, that may not be optimal health training, okay? The reason is sporting athletes push the human body to the maximal limits. And pushing the human body to maximal and supra-physiological limits will bring rise to risk in terms of injuries, in terms of ailments, even in terms of some catastrophes can happen in terms of cardiology, or even sudden cardiac death can happen. So this brings rise to the importance of quantitatively giving the athletes the right training, the right quantity of training, and that is where data becomes an important tool. Sports technology has literally revolutionized sports science, and we are in the middle of a new frontier. Sports technology has enabled the athlete to train smarter. The equipment are getting sophisticated. Analysis is getting foolproof. Facilities are improved. There are a lot of wearables which measures athletes' different parameters. And you can go on and on in terms of sports psychology. So, sports technology. Now, coming to some of the important core areas, one of the important areas is assessing the athlete's stress load. Monitoring the stress load becomes very important. The reason being, athletes have to train at a very high level for a lot of time. Okay, so if you ask for the ideal health training, we say that ACSM, or American College of Sports Medicine, quantifies every adult human being has to go for, so either 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise with some 2 to 3 days of muscle building exercise, which is resistance training. But in terms of elite athletes, it is not like that. They train 2 hours in the morning, have a nap, again come 2 to 3 hours in the evening. So that gives rise to a huge quantity of training, and that is a stressor on the athlete's physiology and the psychology. So to understand individual athlete's stress load becomes very important, and that is where sports technology plays a very important part in terms of wearables. We're going to have an elaborate discussion on wearables by Dr. Gagan, so I'm not going into the details. So monitoring stress load is a very important component, and that is where sports technology plays a real important aspect. Now, nutrigenomics is coming up in a big way, especially in terms of sports nutrition. So, personalized nutrition for athletes is very important. It is not like this much of calories just because Virat Kohli is following a certain diet plan. You cannot copy that and adopt it to your lifestyle. You should not do that to your athletes. Every athlete has to be assessed, and the diet plan, just like an exercise plan, has to be individualized, and that is again an area where nutrigenomics technology plays a very important role, where advanced, depending upon the genetics, depending upon their blood markers, you can give special nutrition for them. Now, coming to data, tech, and sport performance, monitoring metrics like neurocardiac systems, stress hormone fluctuation, especially cortisol, muscle oxygenation, even brain wave patterns, all offer a holistic view of athletes' physiological and neurological status. So data in terms of all the advanced parameters becomes very important in terms of sports performance. Wearables, we'll skip it. Now, broadly, the technology in sports science, as far as athletes is concerned, is depend on training optimization, performance monitoring, injury prevention, and rehabilitation. All these areas, there is role for sports technology, especially wearables, in terms of to give the right quantity of training, to monitor how the athlete is adapting, how his individual systems are adapting to the training program, to give a holistic injury prevention program. Also, you need to understand when you train at such a high intensity over a long period of time, injuries are bound to happen even with the most advanced sports injury prevention programs. So when it comes to injury management, also rehabilitation, sports technology plays a very important component. Now, the future frontiers in technology and sports science, or I would say even currently we also, the previous speaker spoke about the power of our optic nerve, eye optic nerve and CNS is connected big time. And real-time CNS monitoring of cognitive health and mental performance. Especially, there's a lot of research happening in gaze power, okay? Especially for sports which involves reflex activity like table tennis, racket sports, there is a lot of training happening in gaze training, or how to train the eye ocular muscles to concentrate. This becomes even more important because human attention span is gradually reducing. I'm not so comfortable doing a 1 hour presentation. Previous speaker was very comfortable. Somehow I am not so comfortable. The reason being, I've seen students, including myself when I was a student, hate big lectures, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And now it has been well proven with the advent of reels and social media scrolling, human attention span is gradually reducing. And that is where you really need to focus on important, again, muscle is the important one, even here. So you train the ocular muscles in a separate way. It's called, I forgot the name, there's a special training methodology for training the ocular muscles. This will enable or improve the gaze power of the athlete, helping him to have better reaction time and better agility. So all these areas, tech is playing a very, very important role, and it is definitely embedded in sports science. As far as artificial intelligence is concerned, I'm not going to much of the detail, but it is without doubt helping in enhancing the athletic performance by personalizing the training programs with the help of all the technology and wearables. Personalized training programs can be given to the athletes. Tactical decision making with the help of artificial intelligence is a real boom to coaches and trainers. Okay, so during time, analyzing the opponent's strength, opponent's weakness, and giving tactics. Again, these are all huge role by artificial intelligence. Now, we looked into the various benefits of tech. Now, what are the challenges and limitations? You really need to be aware about the ethical considerations and data integrity in the new era. You also need to be aware not all wearables data you can just blindly trust. There are n number of wearables in the market advertising that this measures this, this sensor measures this. You really have to take it with a pinch of salt, because sports tech data wearables is just coming into the market, and that has to fall the time of research. Okay, it has to go through a period of research before. But what happens is it straight away comes into the market, and once we embrace that data and try to give the athletes a data-related training program, it should not go wrong. Okay, so before you blindly trust the athlete, remember to keep the basics strong. Okay, so if you ask me as a doctor, before giving for, first I will always take a history. Next comes the clinical examination, where we examine the athlete or the player. Third, only if necessary, we go for investigations, whether an X-ray or an MRI or a CT scan. Similarly, when we are giving a training program to an elite athlete, it's always important to keep the parameters sound, where you physically assesses fitness parameters, quantify that, and before entirely depending on a tech data, you be sound that you have a database to follow. So qualitative analysis is still as important as quantitative analysis. That is what I would keep saying in the sports science spectrum, even with the advances of sports technology. Now, coming to the final component of my talk. So human beings are racing against time. So we saw how the machines are becoming so intellectual, intelligent. Now, fall back, and if you see the 100 years data, do you really think human beings are reaching the natural limits? When I talk about natural limits, I'm talking in the context of sports players. And in sports, the primary factors like speed, power, strength, endurance, flexibility, agility. The 6 components, do you really think humans are reaching their natural limits, or still we have a lot of scope to improve? What do you think? So if you see the data, men's 100 meters, 100 years before, Jesse Owens ran 10.3 seconds in 1936 Olympics, to current Usain Bolt's world record is 9.58 seconds. The improvement over a 100-year period is just about 5%. Pole vault, there is 86% improvement. Okay? Any reason for that? Anybody? Why in 100 meters it's only 5% improvement in 100 years, while in pole vault there is some 80% improvement, and in cycling there is 200% improvement. Anybody? Excellent. Tech and the gadgets have been evolved in such a way. Okay, the cricket bat. So the evolution of the sport itself has played a part in improvement of this timing. Now, so before looking into the technology of the sports gear, so if you can see, the old generation cricket bats were like this, 300, 400 years, 1700s to the current cricket bat doesn't have any edges. When I used to play 20 years, 25 years before, we used to always season the bat before any matches, and so that the sweet spot is enabled in a big time. Now the newer generation cricketers don't even bother doing that, because the whole cricket bat is a sweet spot. You hit take an edge, the edge also still carries 2-6. So that is how much the cricket bat has enabled, evolutionally improved. Similarly, the racket sports, racket bats also the same. There are vibration controlled rackets. The grips have evolved. The materials used have evolved. All this has played an important part in the timing. And since we talked about pole vault, so previously the pole vault 100 years before has to happen with a wooden stick. So there was hardly any flex involved in it. Now Armand Duplantis, the current world record holder, you can see the amount of curvature the pole vault is able to handle. Okay, so world records, you need to take it with a pinch of salt. So don't undermine the old generation records. That still adds value. Now, similarly, playing surfaces. We used to dominate, at least in one sport, hockey, in Olympics. We used to be I believe 6 to 7 times gold medalist. And after that, what happened is the surface changed. We used to dominate in the clay and grass, and now hockey is moved towards synthetic surface. And with synthetic surface, the playing style, the fitness component completely is changed. And again, that might be one of the reasons we are still not able to get back our glory years in hockey. So evolution of playing surface is an important aspect. Now, the final component, again, doping. Doping is something thing which everybody in sports science has to be aware. Doping has been there from old generation Roman and Greek warriors when Olympics started itself, right away to the newer modern doping guys like Ben Johnson and our famous cyclist. What is his name? Lance Armstrong. Armstrong. So all this, what happens is, athletes are constantly pushing the body to newer territory and performance, and that is where they try to seek any advancements, any ergogenic aids which is possible. So WADA comes with exhaustive list at the end of every September. I believe every year they update their prohibited list, and you can go, it's freely downloadable. 2025 list is already there, so you all need to be aware which, and any doubts, please remember to fall back to a sports medicine doctor, because now anything which goes into the body of an athlete, the athlete is solely responsible along with the support staff. So if something happens, you cannot say your A sample and B sample test positive, athlete is bound to get banned. So don't take a chance. If you have any doubts, don't go for over-the-counter medications, and don't go for undue supplementation, because again, unadulterated supplements are huge in our Indian market. That's something which really needs to be handled. Now, I'm not going into the regular doping concept because that is a huge topic by itself. I'll be touching upon an interesting thing called technology doping. So while what is technology doping? When technology enhances an athlete's performance beyond their natural capabilities, giving them an unfair advantage over the competitions. So basically, the technology also has to be, you should have a level playing field for sporting ethics, okay? If I am using a technology or a performance enhancing drug which will enhance my performance and you are not using that and we go for a race, it is not the level playing field. WADA is celebrating Play True's Play True strategy in April 11th. I call upon all the people who are involved in sports to please follow ISSCM, Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine, where we have championed the cause for anti-doping and Play True as per WADA. Now, coming back to technology doping, again, it is a huge barrier. It's like sports science, when it goes to unhounded areas, whether it's a sports science development or it's a doping, is an interesting question. Now, there are n number of super shoes or performance shoes which is there. We'll be looking into performance enhancing swimwear and also a little bit of neurodoping. Now, performance enhancing shoes. Who is this? Who's this athlete? Any idea? Very good, Eliud Kipchoge. So, what is he famous for? Yeah, multiple marathon world records, and he was again one of the first guy who was able to break the barrier of 2 hours in marathon. Okay, so but what happened is, in that record didn't stay. He had multiple valid records, but the record of breaking 2 hours didn't stay. Reason being, he used a shoe which was not validated by the International Athletic Federation. Okay? That shoes were called as performance enhancing shoes or super shoes. Okay? In marathon or in running, there is one, how they quantify the acceptable ratio of shoe is depending upon the stack height or the sole of the foot. If the sole of the foot is above 25 mm, in endurance events, I don't think it will be validated or accepted in a marathon. Okay, so he used a super shoe which had about 40 mm. Okay, so you really need to train hard to get used to that biomechanics, but after that it becomes a performance enhancing shoe. So this is one example where shoes are hugely evolving. Now, when we used to, previously we used to get a good quality shoe, 2,000, 3,000. Now, marathon shoes, endurance shoes, super shoes are all costing upwardly 15,000, 20,000. Now, the technology which is involved, Nike was one of the first one where they, in 2017, they had a groundbreaking research project where they wanted to break the 2 hours human barrier, and that is where they developed the super shoe called Nike Vaporfly. Okay, and this has really transformed the shoe market. Once Nike started doing, all the other competitors like Adidas, Puma, Asics, all jumped into the fray. Now, if you go in and research on the super shoes, there are n number of super shoes which have a stack height of more than 35 to 40 mm. Now, what is interesting in this super shoes are, there is a layer in the insole itself which has something called carbon plate. Okay, so this carbon plate will enable the change in biomechanics and help in running efficiency. Okay, so with that biomechanics, calf muscles won't get fatigue. Okay, so you can run fast over a period of time, running far without the muscles getting fatigue. So are running shoes getting too good? Definitely, no doubt about it. And this is one example of tech doping. Now, similarly, Speedo some I think in Beijing Olympics, they initially came, all sort of swimming records fell. Okay. Now the reason being they had something called laser racer swimsuit. All the swimmers came with fancy swim wears, which helped in aerodynamics, which is very important in swimming. Okay. So again, this was developed by Aqualab researchers in Speedo, and this helped in preventing the drag, which is very, very important in swimming. Okay, so this is again, and swimming authorities came into the picture, and then they banned the swim vest. Okay, so again an example of tech doping. Now we saw the cycling records have been the biggest different, around 200% improvement in cycling records. Not to be surprised, the reason being the machines involved. Okay, cycles are literally being transformed, and the current cycle is literally like a bike or a machinized ones. Okay, so all this can constitute tech doping if the regulations are not proper. Now, one final important thing is athletes are also trying to push the barriers, because WADA is getting very stringent with all sort of drugs and molecules in the body, and all the doping cheats are getting caught. So athletes are trying newer ways to cheat. Doping is one interesting thing which has come into the market, where athletes try transcranial electrical stimulation, basically stimulating your central nervous system to trick the brain for neurodoping. Okay, so this will help in motor skill acquisition also. It also helps in recovery. Mental fatigue doesn't set in fast. All these are examples where tech is enabling athletes to find new ways for cheating. Now, I'll end with one interesting slide. I don't know how many of you have heard about this games, enhanced games. Anybody? So this is a venture by some capitalists in advanced nations in Australia, USA, and Europe, were headed by this gentleman called Aaron D. Sousa. Now they have got huge funding from even Trump administration. Trump Jr. has invested huge amount of money. Basically, they are trying to have a parallel Olympics where anything is allowed. You can take any supplements, you can take any technology doping. So it is called enhanced games. So just Google up, I think AI will give you a complete picture, okay? So very interesting times we are living in, of times of artificial intelligence and enhanced games. Not sure it is the right spirit to take, okay? But athletes are pushing the barriers. So to conclude, data and tech has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Even the most rigorous data does not speak for itself. Data without context is just basically a collection of numbers. More data does not inherently mean more knowledge. Just like a guy, if I'm having a big library, it doesn't make me so knowledgeable or intellectual, okay? So it has to be followed up with proper interpretation, and that is very, very important. So to conclude, high performance in sports still lies with two important core components, eugenics and euthenics. Genetics still has a very important role. Euthenics is a system or the culture where we are living in, which includes sports science domain. Sports culture has to be there for us to be consistently successful. The coaches has to be advanced and trained in the latest scientific domains. You have to embrace long-term athlete development program and not fall back on non-scientific talent identification program. Tech and data are no more future, they are current frontiers. Please embrace it ethically. There is art and there is science to produce champions consistently. Thank you, and these are the courses offered by our university: sports medicine, exercise physiology, biomechanics, and sports nutrition. Please remember to consistently produce champions. We will need to have a culture of sports medicine and sports science. Please follow Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine, where we would want a huge collaboration from the sports fraternity we are looking at growing together both in terms of academically and research-wise, where we are planning to conduct a lot of certification program and webinars, and we encourage everybody who is working with sports to be part of this. Thank you for the patient hearing.
If among the participants, if anyone is intrigued or have any questions, please come forward.
Can you hear, sir?
Yeah, please.
Sir, how to enhance sport performance through the physiotherapy? And sir, next question is there, sir. We are in Pune, sir. Our student, if I take for the sport, for example, in coastal area, that time, coastal area, their atmosphere is not suit for them. They are not showing the performance. In near coastal, for example, Kerala, Chennai, like this area, if you take for the sport, they are not giving performance. So why they are not giving the performance, sir?
Yeah, as I said, environment does play a very important role. Okay, so if you are having an athlete development program, in temperate, if you're looking at a sport like powerlifting or weightlifting, then you should go for places where it is conducive for that. Similarly, if you're looking for endurance-based events like running or marathon, then it is advantageous to have a high altitude for training. Okay, so depending upon which sport you are looking at, Keralites, they are more popular in soccer. The coastal regions might be good in soccer and those sort of sports. If you are trying to incorporate every sport to a particular area, then it may not work well. Okay, so depending upon the environment scientifically plays an important role. Okay, so sports performance also depends on the environment. So you really need to pick and choose the right environment for training.
What should we take care for that, sir?
Which sport are you talking about?
Yeah. But what is the importance for that, sir? If you enhance the sport through the sport physiotherapy, how we should do the performance for the student?
Okay, so yes, sports science you will have to embrace depending upon the sports. If you are looking at a particular sports, there are two important components. You will have to test and give proper training. Okay, so the testing component is the sports science component, where you do scientific testing and then get validated training programs and deliver them on the field. Okay, so without falling on a proper scientific programs, just giving a regular coaching program might not be the ideal solution. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So one last question. For young athletes who are under 15, how much should they rely on technology or let them build their own natural game?
Young athletes, as I said, you will have to embrace them with a long-term athlete development program and teach the young athletes to love the sport. And everybody goes into the sport for the fun of it. So don't put too much of science at an early stage. Let them play multiple sport, let them enjoy the sport, and then if you find them really talented and performing well, then slowly teach them the science of sport, where you teach them how to compete, and that is a time when you really need to supplement them with all the sports science parameters.
Thank you so much, sir. I believe all of us here are in agreement with your insights on how athletes need good balance between mental health and physical health, along with inculcating technology. The mind is an athlete's most powerful muscle. This mantra will shape more and more successful athletes. So what we feed our mind plays a vital role. With this lesson, I can't thank enough for your keynote speech, sir, today, which has been inspiring and motivating. Thank you once again, sir.